How's everybody doing today?
Here comes Mr. Tenney himself.
Doing good, Tenny. That lighting looks a little dark, sir.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get the lighting right.
You doing
Hope
all right?
hope you all are having a beautiful day. It's Monday. I'll meet up, and we welcome you all. We're in for a great session today. We can't wait to kind of unpack everything we got for everybody today. So, thank you all for joining. And I don't know if you guys already mentioned this. Please tell us where you're joining us from the chat, if you don't mind. Um, and again, I guess, guys, if you got questions too, as Leslie's going through this presentation, please go ahead and drop it in the question chat as well.
We have Tanea from Toronto, Canada. We have Brinsley. Oh, Mr. Brins, welcome to the presentation from Washington, D.C. Mike from Columbia, South Carolina. We got Miles all the way from Tennessee. We got Oluwatosin from Dallas. Oh my God. Leah from Fort Hill, Maryland. Tenny from Charlotte.
Yes, sir.
We,
Yes, sir.
we,
Yes,
we
sir.
got representations from all over. This is lovely. So it is, what time is it? It is 6:05. So to be respectful of everybody's time, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So welcome everybody to the exciting world of multifamily investing meetup. This is a virtual meetup that we host every first Monday of the month. The mission of our meetup really is to educate members of our community about the power of multifamily investing. This meetup was founded back in 2019 when we started our journey in multifamily investing. We realized that a lot of people in our community did not even know that these asset class exists as a vehicle of investment for them to grow wealth and create generational wealth for their families. So starting the business, we thought one of the best ways, we learned from one of our mentors, one of the best ways of building a community and educating people and also building credibility as a business is to educate others. I remember our very first meetup. It was in live person in College Park, Maryland, and how we were nervous. We had just spoken to that mentor, and he was like, "Go start a meetup." And Tenny registered this meetup, and he was like, "Hey, I don't know, but you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna talk about something." And all that nervousness of not even knowing what to say, not knowing as much about multifamily at that time. I was very nervous about that first meetup. But the very first person that attended that meetup was somebody that owned 4,000 units, right? Across the US. He was dropping his daughter off in College Park and he saw that on the meetup app and he came and he ended up being the spokesperson for like the presenter for that meetup and came back for many more subsequent meetups and became a mentor. So I highlight that story to point out where we started, right? Because a lot of times, when we are on this journey, even if you're a passive investor or you want to be an active investor, you could see something like this and get intimidated by that. But I just want everybody on this call to know that the most important thing in life about anything you want to do is just to get started. Just take the first step and there's so many ways that things are going to align for you to move forward. So as we got into this journey, our ethos of investing has always been that we stay very conservative. We provide a ton of education. We educate you whether you invest with us or not, but we want to make sure that when you go out to invest, you're making the right decisions about investing. That ethos has helped us throughout the years, especially going through the climate that we're going through right now, with it being a challenging market, where a lot of people are losing deals and a lot of investors are losing money. So, and that was one of the motivations for us doing this meetup again today, to re-educate members of our community about how to evaluate deals as an investor, right? Before you go in and invest on these deals, these are great assets that provide great returns for you and that are very safe and secured when done correctly. But like anything else, there's some risk involved. And as a passive investor, you understanding how these assets are how these assets are evaluated, how the underwriting happens, and all the numbers that go behind that evaluation will help you to be able to pick the right assets to invest in. So that's the purpose of this presentation today, to give you some tips, some good insights that you could take from today and go start applying tomorrow on the very next deal that you evaluate to help make your decision on whether you want to go forward and invest or not. And if you are an active investor or an aspiring active investor, this too is probably, if there's any information here that you've not encountered before, this is good information for you to use so that as you're going into evaluating deals, you are very careful so you don't make mistakes and lose money for your investors, because multifamily investing is a long game, and the more value you give, the more growth you have. So the tips that we share today, the knowledge that we share in today is going to be very valuable for you as you go along in your investment journey. So without any further ado, let's dive into how to evaluate a deal, looking at underwriting metrics. So I think I went a little bit about our history, about how we got started with this meetup. But who am I? I am just one of the many pieces that make Excite Capital Investments. I am here today representing my two amazing partners, our CEO, Dr. Julius Oni, who is currently in Saudi Arabia, and our Director of Acquisitions, Tenny Tolofari, the guy you see there in the dark light. If you look at the videos, you see anybody and all you see is his teeth. That's Tenny Tolofari, director, director of acquisition. And we are also here with our amazing team. We could not do this without the team that has supported us throughout these years. We have the amazing team leader, Mouse Hill, our operations associate, Mike Dawson. We have our analyst all the way from Nigeria, Mr. Chima Caleb. And we also have our amazing administrative assistant, Chris Dorotori, all the way from Nigeria as well. On this call today, our other team members, Mr. Manny Awesome and Miss Alicia Galloway, are not here on the call, but they're always here with us in spirit. So it's just important that I highlight all those people, because all the work that we put in is what is making this presentation today possible. Again, we were founded in 2019. I'm one of the founders. Over the last 5 years, we've been able to acquire 116 million of assets. I'm also I recently moved away from the 9 to 5 to focus on entrepreneurship full time, and all of that was possible because of what we created here at Excite. I'm also a dad of 3 amazing children, whom I got hiding in the closet so they cannot interrupt this call. I'm just joking, guys. Don't call child protective service on me, by the way. And my amazing wife, who also supports me along the way as well. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Guys, I want you to pay close attention to the screen, because this is what we're seeing in the news today when it comes to multifamily investing. In the next coming months, we're going to see more of this. These are headlines of people that lost deals, operators that are abandoning deals, and the investors are losing their money. The banks are taking back these assets from the operators because of multiple reasons. But one of the main reasons is, like, the bank will take the assets away from you if you cannot pay your debt, right? So a lot of things has happened over the last 2-3 years that is leading up to this. While this presents like a very unique opportunity, a great opportunity for anybody that is looking to get into multifamily investing, like the same kind of opportunity that single family real estate presented in 2008, 2009, we're seeing now in commercial real estate. Why that presents that opportunity, it's also important that if this is your first time investing, this is when you want to get in, that you still maintain strong evaluation skills, that you still understand how to evaluate this deal so that you protect yourself, your income, protect your investors as an active investor as well. So when you do your due diligence very well as a passive investor, the chances of you being involved in one of these deals that are involved with these headlines is very, very low. And those are some of the things that I'm going to cover today that you will be able to take and apply in your investment journey so that you're well protected. And for everybody who stays all the way to the end of this presentation, you will get access to a guide that we have put together that you could always use and use as a reference every time that you're going to invest on the deal. So you don't have to go and start reading all the books that we've read to have this knowledge. We've compiled everything for you in a few pages that we use, that you can use, share with your friends. so that you make right investment decisions. So stick with us to the end. We'll keep providing value. All right, let's dive into it. So the goal tonight, like I mentioned, I'm going to equip you guys with the tools for effective multifamily evaluation so that you could prevent any deal evaluation pitfalls. And so it could empower you to make really good decisions when it comes to investing. So we're going to go through market analysis, property valuation, and we're going to talk about some financial review. Some of the terms here, you might be exposed to it for the first time. I'm going to do my best to try to explain it for all the new or the aspiring investors that are not familiar with this at all. And if I don't explain it very well, please ask your questions at the end. So let's dive into the market analysis. I'm sure you've heard the saying, if you've ever read any book in real estate or listened to anything about real estate, they'll tell you the three most important factors of real estate investing is location, location, location. That's where the market comes in. Investing in a good location can help save a deal that is going bad, right? Because a good location that is growing can save a bad deal with the all ships rising effect, whereas a great deal in a bad location can still struggle. So when you are going into as an investor, as an active investor or passive investor, one of the first things you got to look at is, where is this deal located? Is this deal located in a market that is growing, or is it located in a market that is declining? Very important. Key aspects to look at to determine if a market is growing or declining. Number one is population growth. You want to go where people are moving to, where people are growing, where population is growing, because you are investing in an asset that provides a core human need. So you need people to live in those assets. So it's obviously where people are going to, there's going to be more demand. The basics of economics always remains demand and supply. So you want to go somewhere where demand is increasing, because as demand increases, the value of the asset that is in demand is going to increase. So the market is very, very important. And when it comes to our multifamily real estate investing, when we talk about markets, we're not looking at the macro level, like, oh, for example, Washington, D.C. is a great market and you just go buy everything in Washington, D.C. No. Real estate is hyper local, right? Because in some markets that have good macro numbers, one neighborhood might be great, and right next to it, right across the train tracks, is not a great neighborhood. So you got to focus in, zero in down to the hyper locality of that market or wherever the asset is located, to make sure that you have the right metrics. That particular neighborhood, there's good median household income in that area. There is good jobs around that area. You want to go where like close to great amenities, right? Next to hospitals. One good hack, you see a property that is next to a Starbucks or Target, you want to invest in that property. Why? Because these retail businesses spend a significant amount of money doing market research to identify where growth is coming before they go and plan their stores. If you want to pay close attention to it, if you see a new Starbucks come in a neighborhood, give it 3-4 years and you're going to see that neighborhood grow significantly. Again, so those are some of the things you want to look at to make sure that you're investing in a location that is good enough, right? Another piece you want to look at is the amount of inventory that is coming into that market. Again, basic economics goes back to demand and supply. If supply is too high, right, it's going to decrease demand. And then that puts the market into a competitive state. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because in most markets where supply increases, where inventory increases, that's markets that have been projected to grow. And then the city goes crazy and gives a ton of permits for people to build a bunch of buildings. There might be a temporary period of oversupply. And that might also present as an opportunity for you to buy, because at that point, demand exceeds supply. But as long as that market has like the strong fundamentals for future growth, you could hold on to that asset for a few years, and then the demand, because what usually happens, the studying like most US cities, what usually happens is, like, when there's a low inventory, the city goes crazy, and when they see a lot of people moving in, they go crazy and they issue out a ton of permits for buildings. Then you go through this period where there's hyper supply, like a ton of new construction, ton of new buildings that are coming to the market. Now, when that happens, the rents start going down in that market, right? And that is usually an opportunity for you as an investor to go in and buy in this market if it's a market that's projected to grow in the long term. Because when that happens, the city sees that there's hyper supply, they pause the issuance of permits for like 3 to 5 years to give the city time to recover and occupy all those empty units. And that lag period of pausing permits usually catches up later on, where you have now high demand, low supply, and then rents start going up. And when rents are going up, the value of your multifamily assets typically increase. So that's the point where if you bought a building when supply was high, demand was low, and you exit out when demand is high, supply is low, you're going to make a profit. So that is why it's very important to pay close attention to the market. Make sure that you understand the metrics of the market. Ask your sponsor. If you're a passive investor, ask your sponsor. Why are you investing in this market? What are the growth projections of this market? Here are some numbers that you could ask the sponsor. What's the average vacancy in this market? And what are you underwriting as the vacancy for this property, right? How many new units are coming into this market? What's the rent growth? Rent growth is very important. You want to know what the rent growth is being projected in the underwriting. And I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper as we go into the presentation. So on your initial analysis, you want to understand the local market, and it involves researching factors like employment, population growth. You utilize methods in like evaluating the value of the property. Sales comes. If you're a passive investor, you ask the person that's presenting the deal to you, what are the sales comparables? When the last properties that sold in this area, how much per unit were they selling for? And you look at those numbers and you compare it to what that property is being bought for, right? So when you're going into the pro forma analysis, these are some of the things that you want to look at. I touched a little bit on rent growth, expense ratios, cap rates, taxes, capital reserves. And what is a pro forma? A pro forma is a projection of how the asset is going to perform over time, right? It's a projected performance based on actual current performance and future projections of growth in that particular market. Now, what I always tell investors, and this is what I'm going to tell you, the pro forma is always 100% wrong. Listen again. The pro forma is wrong 100% of the time. As an operator, my goal is to make sure that my pro forma is wrong in a good way, because these are projections. If anybody tells you that their pro forma is 100% right, those are the people you want to run away from. You got to have the humility to admit that these projections are going to come out wrong. So you want to make the projections wrong in a good way. That's by being conservative, so that the numbers that you actually get are higher than what you're projecting, right? So just remember, the pro forma is always projections. That's why you want to ask where all of these numbers are coming from, what the metrics represent. Rent growth is very important. The value of multifamily assets is based on the income that it generates. If rent is growing, the income is going to grow, the value of the assets will grow. It's an exponential curve, because a single dollar increase in rent or in income on a multifamily property in today's market will increase the value of that property by $16. That's a 16x multiple. So if you buy a property in a market where rent is growing, you have the chance to significantly increase the value of that property. If an operator buys a property and projects high rent growth, it's going to show that the potential returns of that property is way higher than what is actually capable of producing. And we're going to illustrate that here shortly. So that is why rent growth is a very important metric that you want to pay close attention to. Another metric you want to pay close attention to is the expense ratios. What are those? When we buying these buildings, is buying a business. In our pro forma, which is like the income statement in each building, you have every line item, every expense, every income line item, rents, maybe pet fees, administrative fee, that's an income line item. In the expense line items, we have like administrative fees, marketing, payroll, repair and maintenance, contract services. All those are line items for the expense. Typically, in most markets, you could generally see the trend of what the expense ratios are. What do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, in a market like Charlotte, you can do an analysis of like a particular zip code and you say the average expense ratios for all Class A buildings in this zip code is about 40%. Class C buildings, maybe 50%. So now you know what the market expense ratios are. So now if the operator, if the person presenting the deal to you is presenting a deal, a Class C deal, for example, Class C means that it's an older property, and older properties usually have a higher expense ratio. If an operator is presenting you a deal, a Class C deal, and saying the expense is 30%, you want to question that, because most likely they are underestimating what the true expenses are to increase their projected returns. So you want to be careful of that, and I'm going to illustrate that here shortly. Now, when we talk about capital reserves, this is very, very, very important, guys. You want to make sure that any deal you're investing in, whether as a passive investor or you're buying it as an active investor, you have adequate reserves. The 3 immutable laws of real estate investing are: number 1, buy for cash flow; number 2, have long-term debt; and number 3, have adequate cash reserves. When you have those 3 things in place, the chances of you losing on a deal is very low. So you want to ask your operator, how much in reserves do you have to manage this property? Because like Mike Tyson, one of my best quotes is from the great philosopher, Mr. Mike Tyson himself, who says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Reserves will save you when you get punched in the face, because like I said, your pro forma is always 100% wrong. And when you go into a situation where things are not going as planned, your reserves will save you. Remember, these assets, investing in this asset is a long-term play. So it's like 5 years, 7 years, or even 10 years hold in some cases. So within that period of time, you might experience a year or maybe a few months of instability, of like market downturn, or things are not going well, right? But then you still have that long period of time to stabilize the asset and move forward. Now, having reserves will help protect you in owning that asset if you hit something unexpected. And this can happen. A lot of things can happen that you have no control over. For example, the COVID crisis we just went through, right? If you didn't have any reserves and everything shuts down and the government did not provide support to citizens like it did, you'll be losing your asset because you're unable to pay for it. So reserves are very important. You want to make sure that your operator has enough funds in reserves. Another important factor you want to pay close attention to are the taxes. When we buy assets, the taxes do increase because the valuation of the asset and the tax, the city wants to make money, so they're going to increase the value of the asset based on the new purchase price. So you want to make sure that your operator is projecting taxes based on the new valuation, not on the old valuation, because the increases can be very significant. I'm talking about, you could have assets that somebody has owned for like 10 years. They're bought it for like $80,000 per unit, for example, and they're selling it to somebody else now for $150,000 per unit. Their taxes has not increased much since their ownership because it hasn't really exchanged hands. Now, when you come and buy it at $150,000 per unit, those taxes might actually double. So you want to make sure that the operator is factoring that into their projections, the new tax value, and ask a question: where are you getting your taxes from? Ideally, you want to get taxes from a third-party tax professional that gives you actually what the property is going to get charged in taxes once you take over. And another important question you want to ask your operator, and if you're an operator on this call or an aspiring operator, this is something that you want to ask from the buyer, and make sure that it is included in your purchase and sale agreement. You want to ask the buyer, listen very carefully, guys. You want to ask the buyer if any of the taxes are under appeal, not by the seller themselves, but also by the city. is there any litigation on the taxes? You got to make sure that the seller discloses any litigation or anything, because you might buy an asset and there's litigation on it, you're not aware on it, and the tax values are not going to show in any kind of records. But when you take over the asset, the city wins its taxes, its tax litigation, and you're stuck with the increased tax burden. So you want to make sure that you ask that question, and you make sure that is written in your purchase and sale agreement. That right there is a ton of value, and you want to make sure that you incorporate that into your process. What kind of debt is being used? You guys saw the highlights that I started this presentation with all the assets that are being seized by the bank, all the assets that are going on there, which unfortunately a lot of investors are going to lose money on. And one of the primary reasons why these assets are being lost is because of the debt that it was purchased. We are saying that we are out there educating our investors and our community about the great opportunity that exists in multifamily investing over the next 12 to 24 months. A once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. And the reason for that is because of the debt. Over the last 2 years, operators bought deals with floating rate debt because when interest rates dropped down to almost zero, that's the Fed fund rate, some of these assets became too expensive because most of them are bought by debt. When debt is cheap, the prices go up. So the traditional lenders, who are the government agencies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, were very cautious, and all the leverage, that's the amount of debt that they were given for the prices of the assets, was maybe 50, 60%. Most operators were like, that's kind of tough. It means I'm going to have to raise 50% of the value to buy this asset. So it's not really, at those prices, it's not making sense. So in came short-term lenders, bridge lenders. These bridge lenders are traditional lenders that give out debt to developers. Their debt is usually short-term, and the interest rate is floating. Fixed versus floating. A floating rate interest means that it adjusts according to the Fed funds rate. So if the Fed funds rate is at zero, the interest rates will be low. But when the Fed fund rate goes up, the interest rate goes up. So most buyers at that point bought like an insurance policy on their interest rate, which is called a rate cap. But most of those rate caps were bought for 2 years, and that 2 years expired. Most of it is expiring this year. So you're seeing assets, great assets in great location, with strong fundamentals, but that were bought with bad debt because the interest rates has increased from maybe 4% that it was at with the rate cap to 9%. Hear this clearly, guys. Your interest rate increases from 4% to 9%. That means your debt service cost doubles. At that point, you are not making enough cash flow to pay your debt. And on top of that, we have other things that are going on. Insurance premiums are going up. The market is softening because of oversupply in most markets, so rents are not increasing as most people projected. So there's a lot of distress in the market, and a lot of that distress was driven by debt. So if you are investing in an asset, you want to make sure that that asset has a fixed debt on it, or at least a bridge debt, that if you're getting a bridge debt, it has a longer rate cap on it, right? And there's a clear plan in place to refinance those assets into a more stable debt. Because I would not say do not invest on any asset with bridge debt, because there are some good cases for bridge. If you find a great asset in a great market that needs some stabilization, the agencies will not be able to give you debt on it, and the bridge lenders will give you a loan that also covers the cost of renovation. And if it's renovated and increases the value over time, you should be able to easily refinance into a fixed debt. But so you want to put all of these factors in place when you're choosing what assets to invest in. But floating rate debt without a cap increases your risk significantly of losing your money. And that's exactly what happened to all those headlines that you saw at the beginning of this presentation. So guys, pay close attention to that. It is one of the factors that will save your investment. Now, let's dive into like a case study. This is me taking on the hat of Professor Manny, my best hat of Professor Manny that I could, to dive into some numbers here. So this is an example. I want to illustrate to you guys how important all these numbers are. The expense ratios, the cap rates, the rent growth, how that affects your returns and how that affects your projections. So when you are looking at a deal that gets presented to you, you are not focused only on the projected returns, but what is included to give you that projection. Because anybody can put on a pro forma and say you're going to get 20, 30% average on our returns. And it's easy to do with changes in some of these projections. But is that realistic? Is that achievable? So you want to make sure that these are achievable before you can jump in an investment. So this is an example, this scenario. On a building built in 1988, 234 units. Purchase price is $33.5 million. And the market cap rate that is the cap rate at which we're buying the asset is 5.4. The net operating income is $1.8 million, right? Business plan, typical value add, renovate a few of the units, and then optimize expenses and hold for 5 years. Now, pay close attention on how different projections produce different results. Let's start with the average rent growth. Here, in the underwriting, the operator has 3% rent growth every year, right? Everything else is the same, 50% average expense ratio. Cap rate is still 5.4 on exit. The average annual return is 14%, right? This is a deal that is done conservatively because the 3% rent growth is in line with inflation. And rents typically increase with inflation. Now, look at this same deal. Everything is the same, right? But the only change is the increase in rent growth in just 1 year, in year one only, from 3 to 7%. Now, I want you to see how significantly that inflates the returns from 14% to 17% average annual returns, right? So that is why it's important that you want to ask, what is the projected rent growth and where are those numbers coming from? Some markets will have 7% average annual rent growth projection, but you want to see the data source where that projection is coming from. CoStar is a great reliable data source that we use, that most operators use as well. So you want to see that data, that projection is backed by actual data. As you can see, there's a significant difference as well. If you just increase from 3 to 5% average rent growth in year one only, right? Now imagine doing this year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, you seriously inflate the returns. You know, and 15% annually is not small. It's not a small return versus 14, right? That 1 percentage point for like somebody that invests maybe $100,000 is significant. So that's why I say don't just always jump onto the deal that promises you higher returns. Go with what the numbers are in line with where the market is at. Now let's look at expense ratio. This is a big one because I see a lot of scenarios where some operators take over a deal from a previous owner, and the deal is operating at maybe 50% expense ratio. And their business plan is, we're gonna stabilize this and bring the expense ratio down to 35%. Guys, now I want you to see how much that changes the returns just by changing those expense ratios. Decreasing the expense ratios from 50 to 35% increases a 10% return point on the projected returns. Now, this is significant. And you might hear that we're going to decrease the expenses as a stabilization plan. And you say, oh, this is a good deal. No, you want to look at where the market is at. You want to look at the asset. Is this an old asset? Are these numbers achievable? Ideally, in most of the assets we present and underwrite, our expense ratios are typically higher than what the previous owner runs the assets at, because we want to be conservative, right? Other things are going to go up, like taxes and all of that. So you expect that to be up. But there's a caveat. There might be deals that are badly managed that really have that opportunity to decrease their expenses. But even the expenses that are projected as a decrease, you want to make sure that those projected expenses are in line with the market. If Class A buildings in that market are running at a 40% expense ratio, and you see a deal, same vintage being projected, like same age. When I say vintage, I mean the age. It's being projected at 20% expense ratio. You want to be careful and stay away from that. And same thing, dropping from 50% to 40% without changing anything else. Rent growth remains the same. Cap rate remains the same. That significantly inflates the value of that property. So you want to pay close attention to the expense ratio. Ask the operator, what expense ratio are you projecting? Is this in line with the market? What's the data source? As an operator, you want to be careful, right? It's easy to say, oh, I'm going to decrease expenses, but everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. Better to be conservative. Now we're going to talk about cap rate. Cap rate is a big one, right? And cap rate significantly affects the value of a multifamily asset. The valuation of a multifamily asset is determined by taking the net operating income and dividing it by the market cap rate. The market cap rate is the denominator. So small changes in that denominator significantly inflates the value of that property. So you want to know what cap rate, what exit cap rate. The exit cap rate is the most important. What exit cap rate is being projected for that asset? And what is that based off of, right? You don't want to invest in an asset where somebody just decides to put any kind of cap rate. That is not based on data. That is not based on actual projections, market projections. Know where the market is at currently and what is being projected on exit. As you can see, changes in cap rate. For example, changing the cap rate from 5.4 to 5 is actually, I think I made an error here. It's actually 17%. And then changing it just by 0.2 basis point, percentage point increases the return to 16% average on our return. So this is key. Look at what the projected cap rate is and what the market is at. Make sure that everything is in line, because I can, as an operator, I can go in and just dial down the cap rate, and then my returns are super ambitious, you know. And then when I go into managing those assets, I'm unable to meet those projections. This is another illustration of how cap rates affect your returns on a deal. It's called a sensitivity analysis, right? This is a typical return for somebody that maybe invested $100,000. The lower the cap rate, you can see how significant the returns increase. Like dropping the cap rate, for example, in this deal, from 5.45 exit cap rate to 4.7, you have 32% average annual returns. A significant jump. So guys, if there's nothing else that you get from this, right, always make sure you ask about the cap rate. What cap rate is being projected on exit? Are these numbers in line with where the market is at? Are these numbers in line with projections? What are the projections based off of? What is the data source? Question everything, right? These, I repeat, these assets are a great way to grow wealth when done correctly. Don't be a lazy investor, right? I know there's the notion of you want to be passive. Passive does not necessarily mean that you do not educate yourself and know where you're investing. You work really hard to earn your money, have the basic understanding of how to evaluate these assets so you can know the right assets to put your money into, right? Don't take anybody's word for it. Do your own research, do your own numbers, and a lot of this data is available free online. If you're looking at rent, you could simply go on apartments.com and look at how much that property is renting for, and look at where the other properties in that area are renting for, to see if these numbers that are being presented by the operator are realistic, right? If you're asking for rent growth, you want to know what the data source is, where they're projecting that rent growth from. Same with cap rate, same with expense ratios. So you want to ask all of that, right? You want to ask all those questions, right? And like I said in the beginning, to make things easy for you, we have developed the ultimate guide for the passive investor to safely invest in these assets, right? And for all of you, I see we got a good number here still on this call. For all of you that are on this call right now, you're going to get this copy of a passive investor guide in your emails that goes into more details about some of the concepts that I've spoken about today and goes in a little bit more detail that you could use to educate yourself, please share with anybody else that is looking to invest in multifamily assets so that they can go in and invest in these assets and invest in a safe manner and not lose their investment. And because, like I said, our mission is to educate as many people as we can about the power of multifamily investing. Even if you end up not investing with us, learn about these assets and do invest, be it as a passive investor or as an active investor. And if you're looking to become an active investor, we have a few slots left in our mentorship program, and we're starting a mastermind as well. If you're interested, just reach out to one of my team members in the chat, and then we could talk about it to see if you qualify to be in one of our programs. All right, we're only taking a few people. Go ahead, Tenny.
I was just gonna drop it out there. I just dropped the link as well. Like
Okay.
Leslie mentioned, as you were speaking, I was like, you know what? I'm going to interrupt this guy and drop this link so that people can understand the benefit of this. But like, let me let you finish your conversation. But this is powerful, man. This is powerful.
Thank you, Tenny. And in the methodology I've taught to you guys, I've explained to you guys today is the same methodology that we use in acquiring all the assets that you have on here. And I'm telling you that methodology has saved us a lot. Because this is one of the most challenging markets in multifamily investing. But our assets are still there, doing well, moving in the direction that we want them to move. So take that, use it for yourself, make great investment decisions, and there's a significant amount of opportunity out there coming soon because of all the mistakes or all the errors that some other operators made in the past. So in the words of Warren Buffett, the best time to buy is when there's blood on the streets. And again, on behalf of our amazing team, led by our CEO, Dr. Julius Oni, our Director of Acquisitions, Tenny Tolofari, all the amazing members that we have in our team lead, Miles, our Investor Relations Specialist, Alicia, Manny, our underwriting genius, Chima, our underwriting specialist, Mike, our operations specialist, and Mr. Chris himself, our wonderful executive assistant. We say thank you.
Yeah. And you want
Thank
to
you.
open it up for some questions, Leslie?
Yes, I will. Thank you
Okay.
for taking the time to be here with us this evening. And now is the time to ask any questions that you may have.
And also, if you're not shy, you can come on camera as well. I know my camera is dark, but I hope you guys can see my teeth though. But please come online. Feel free to ask a question. And then we're gonna get to the networking piece as well, where you can share about who you are, what you're doing, what part of the journey you're in, and we'll see how we can help you there. Anything in business, because we've been there and we've been learning a lot in business as well. So
I have one question here. It says, how do you determine rent growth in the market? Is rent growth ever affected by any local laws to protect affordability? That's a great question, Brinsley. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Rent growth is affected by local laws. That's why we typically don't invest in blue states. We typically invest in red states that are more investor friendly and landlord friendly than blue states because I'll give you an example. I believe it was right after COVID, New York implemented like a really bad rent control law. And right around that time too, Amazon was the HQ2 that was going to New York. They got kicked out of there. And then the market just plummeted. It just plummeted because all the investors had to run away. There were a lot of buildings that even got abandoned halfway because there was not a vision on how to be able to increase the value of those buildings because of the rents. So local laws definitely affected. So you want to put that into perspective when you're choosing what markets to invest in. Now, as far as determining rent growth, we use different data sources. Our CoStar is a very good data source that we use. We also rely on our property managers that are on site that have a lot of other tools that they could dive into and look at and say, okay, this is what rent growth is or where it's at. Brins, you had a follow-up on that question? I see your hand up.
Yes.
Right.
I've not heard you guys. I know it's interesting that when you're doing the numbers, I didn't hear anything about. Are you guys interested in like buying land and building your own so that you can force your appreciation once you're done? Sort of a construction loan that will finance a multifamily.
Yes. So development is like a totally different ball game. That's an area of growth that we're looking to grow into eventually. We're actually working with one of our mentors to do a build to rent, which is like building about 100 to 200 townhomes and renting it as a multifamily. But that's something that we're gonna look into in the near future. It's something that we haven't done yet. Yeah, but that is one way to invest as well. It requires, like everything, it has its own learning curve. It requires you to go in and learn. And development is a little bit riskier than these assets because you're buying with this kind of investing, value add investing, you're buying an asset that has people in there. It's cash flowing when you buy it, right? So all you have to do is go in and improve the value and maybe doing some renovations and then be able to capture the market rent growth. With development, you're buying land, you have to build that from scratch, and a lot of things could go wrong. One good example is like right now with the same interest rates, there are a lot of developers that are selling their pre-developed projects away because they cannot afford to hold it any longer. I talked about bridge debt. That's typically the loan that is given to developers. It's a bridge debt, and you have a floating rate debt on it, interest rate on it. So that loan is short term. They'll buy the land, develop it over 2-3 years, exit out of it, right? But when you come into a climate where interest rates increase as they did, you have developers that got into projects with like 4-5% development loans, and now those interest rates on those loans is like 10%. And they can afford to hold that property that is not producing income at this time right now. So they are just selling the projects for a discount and exiting. So everyone comes with his own risk, but that is a great business to be in, to learn how to do it, and then you could make some great returns from that. It's certainly an area that we are interested in for the future, but not yet. Said, have you
I think-
considered, Oluwatosin asks, have you considered investing in any other asset class other than multifamily? Yeah, so the great thing about real estate investing is there's so many options that you could get into, but you got to choose your battle, right? One of the most important thing you got to do in any business or any investing that you get into is focus. We will not look at anything else other than multifamily until we knew that we had been in that particular business for at least 5 years. And that is at the point where we start looking and say, okay, we believe we've been in here long enough. We can start looking at developing, maybe build to rent, working with a mentor or doing something like that. But important, there's going to be a lot of shiny objects. Airbnb, we've had it all. Oh, this nursing home, it comes along our way. But in order for you to grow and become some sort of an expert in one field, it's important to focus. Then once you're focusing in one area and become good at it, then you can look at other assets. So as of right now, we're not looking at anything, maybe just the build to rent, which is still considered multifamily. But who knows? Maybe in the future we might look at other assets. Some of the one thing that we're really intrigued about is like the ability to buy businesses and improve the value on it and then exit out of those businesses. So but we haven't gone really deep into that, but we'll see what happens in the future. Tenny, you want to add anything on that?
Oh no, you're crushing it, man. I don't know the juice you're drinking tonight, but keep going.
And Leah asks, when buying an interest rate cap, is 2 years the max term you can buy for or longer term? The max term is usually 3. And then after 3 years, you have to buy an extension. Because remember, these are like insurance companies, so they have to protect the downside as well, right? So they can't give you too long of an interest rate cap because they're gonna end up paying a lot for it. Like one of our deals, we have a 3-year interest rate cap on it. We still has like 2.5 years left on it. Every month the cap provider pays out like $50,000, $60,000 in like the interest rate increase. That is being the cap that we bought. So it can get expensive, especially in a market like this when interest rates go up. Prince, you muted if you had a question.
Yeah, can you please explain again how the interest cap works? I didn't really get that.
Absolutely. So it's the interest rate cap is like an insurance policy on the interest rate, right? So you take debt, you buy a property, and then you take a bridge debt. The bridge debt typically comes, the terms are going to say something like SOFR plus 3%. SOFR is like the running market interest rate, right? Or it's gonna say 4% plus SOFR, right? SOFR is like the rate out because the way interest rate work is like you have the Fed funds rate. When the Federal Reserve comes out and said interest rates are going to be at a zero, that means the Fed funds rate is zero. So the banks would take money from the Federal Reserve and lend it out to you, and then they'll charge an additional maybe 2% on top of the Fed fund rate, right? So that rate can be fixed or it can be floating, right? So the bank can take the risk and say, I'm going to give you a loan. It's going to be, the Fed fund rate is at 4%. I'm going to give you a 6% loan over 5 years, locked in. So for those 5 years, it cannot go more than that 6%. It doesn't matter what the Fed fund rates go up to at that point in time. Now, other banks will say, you know what, it's going to be a floating rate. I can give you a low rate now, but it's going to be floating. That increases the risk. So that means if the Fed fund rate changes or that SOFR changes, your interest rate increases, right? So that's what the rate cap protects against. It locks that interest rate. Let's say I could buy an insurance policy, a rate cap that says this interest rate cannot increase by more than 2 points, right? And then I pay like maybe $100,000 or $2 million or whatever it's being sold for at that time. So anytime if the interest rates go past that 2 points, the insurance company has to pay the balance of the debt. Now, when that rate cap expires, the interest rate goes crazy, right? So that's what the rate cap does. It protects, it kind of takes a floating rate debt and makes it fixed over a period of time. Once that rate cap expires, the interest rates go up.
Got you. So sort of like you buy a car and then you buy gap insurance.
Yeah, gap insurance, right? Where if the
Yeah.
value diminishes, you can still get a certain value for it if you total the car.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Kind of something like that.
More questions. You have more questions. Come on camera and ask. Leslie's on fire. He's ready to answer any questions right now.
I have another question. Based on your portfolio, which deal was the most challenging that you barely or made a profit, but it was very difficult to cut it? And what was the, I would say, the mistakes, or how did you fix it?
That's a very good question.
Very good question.
That's a very good question, Brinsley. This deal right here, 101 Elwood, this is the one that gives me gastritis every night. So, and I'll give you a little background story. And we still own the deal, and we finally got it back to where we projected for it to be, but it took way longer than what we expected. So we got this deal from our relationships with a bank, a local bank that told us the owner gave us insights. The current owner was struggling to manage it. It's a deal local to us. We know it because it's like next to Johns Hopkins and everything. So we saw an opportunity to buy an asset and stabilize it, right? Like I said, your pro forma is always 100% wrong. This is another instance where our pro forma was wrong. But because we have some of the other measures in place, we're still able to get it back to a certain level. So we were projecting that we're going to stabilize this asset after 6 months of takeover, right? But when we took over, we realized the previous owner had said a lot, like just gave us like a lot of false information about the property. So we had to evict about 35 people out of the building. And in a market where you talked about local laws affecting rent growth in the market, in a market like in the D in Maryland, Baltimore is a tenant-friendly state. So it's tough to get some of these bad tenants out. So the stabilization that we projected for 6 months ended up taking about 12 to 14 months. Right? So, and again, a good thing is like going into the asset, we're very conservative in our underwriting and we have a good amount of reserves. So it was a constant battle, like trying to figure out what's working, coming up with innovative marketing strategies, right? To get the asset from our occupancy dropped to as low as I think was like 77%, right? To get it from that 77% all the way back to 95%. In a market that was facing some challenges with oversupply as well, because they had a bunch of new buildings that came into market at the same time. And Baltimore is not the biggest growth market. So we have to come up with different innovative ways of marketing, using social media, tapping into the medical community, just being very aggressive in our approach, doing some renovations in the building. And thankfully, we've been able to get it back to where we want it to be. It being now at 95% occupied and high demand. Now we are at the point where we're increasing rents back on the property. So yeah, that's the one property where things are for all the properties, like I said, things did not go as planned, but in a good way, right? Where we projected it was going to happen this way, but it came out better. But this one has been a good challenge. We've learned a lot of great lessons and we're stabilizing it and getting it back to great shape.
And a lot of those lessons is what he was just sharing with you, everybody right now in the call, giving you guys pointers, because a lot of time, if you've not done this, you will not understand some of the risk and some of the things that you're doing. And that's why he's providing specific guidance on what you need to do before you look at a deal and say, yes, I want to buy this or not. Now, on the other hand, the other deal, the Land Bank Loft that you're seeing on the left right there, is a deal that we got and we underestimated. It's one of those deals that we were like, well, don't want to just buy this deal. We think you sure it's going to produce what we're projecting. And it's one of the best performing assets now in our portfolio because it's about, if it surpass all the other assets that we have in terms of projections and the returns, and it doesn't have any issues at all. Maintenance is very low and best performing asset. So like you said, pro forma is always wrong, but you want it to be wrong in a good way. So we've missed, like with the other one, the view at St. Andrews, a deal we bought, and we give it investors about 30% average annual return. We projected 18. You see what I'm saying? So, but at the end of the day, you go in, you know what you're doing, you put in the right team in place, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and remember what I said, 3 immutable laws of real estate investing: buy for stable debt, cash flow, and adequate reserves. Real estate investing, multifamily real estate investing is a long game. It's not a short game. It's not a get rich quick scheme. So you might go into your business plan. There might be some rough patches within that business plan, but you have the time to stabilize it and move it over time. And on exit, you're still able to make a significant return for your investors. So deals like this that provide a challenge are great opportunities, because once you stabilize it, increase the income, you could exit at a much higher basis.
Absolutely. I think let's is that the networking time for everybody that's
And I think Brinsley had the follow-up question. Go ahead, Brinsley.
Yeah. I was gonna ask. Hopefully, it's my last question. I was gonna ask that.
You muted yourself there, Brins.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. Apart from servicing your loan, which is probably the most expensive of the process, which other costs really eat into, let's say, your profit margin?
Taxes.
Really?
taxes, insurance.
I,
Taxes.
I was I was
Taxes is
thinking
big.
repairs will come somewhere in there. It's not that much.
Nah.
Okay.
No, it's not that much. Taxes is big. Like you want to make sure that you get the right tax projection, like the actual tax numbers. Because yeah, it's huge. Actually, taxes can actually be higher. Is it higher than debt service? In some deals, it can be higher than debt service.
Depending on the market.
Yeah.
So that I'm sure that every county, every state has a different percentage that they charge in tax.
Yeah, that's a millage rate that they use. There's a formula that they use to calculate taxes. So every jurisdiction, you get those numbers and you do. And Manny does a good job of teaching that to our great mentees in the underwriting class on Saturdays. Figure out how to so that we don't make this mistake on taxes. So
Interesting.
And
all
then
right, guys.
one other thing that we've observed in the market as well, folks that are in Florida, a lot of times you go into this deal and you project X amount, let's say $500 or $700 in insurance, and then the market changes, insurance company pull out, and then insurance triple. That automatically kills your deal because usually you're projecting that I'll be able to come in, add value, increase rent by $200, but your expense just went up 3 times. So so a lot of things you have to factor in, and a lot of those things are things that we're trying to make sure we'll provide those kind of guidance to folks that are part of our community, so that even if you don't invest with exact capital, you're looking at a deal. These are some of the things you want to take into consideration and say, hey, have you done this? I want to ask. And anybody you're asking these questions, you're trying to go invest in the deal, and you're asking this question, they refuse to give you the answers. Please just take your money and walk away because you've worked hard for it. And anybody that you put giving your hard-earned money to should answer your questions. And no questions should be dumb. Just ask any questions that you have to any operator that you're working with. Okay.
It's interesting you talked about Florida because I was just reading an article. It was talking about a law in Florida where every multifamily home has to do some kind of a inspection on their property every 10 years with some exorbitant amount of fee, and that adds to like HOA or the kind of stuff. So it adds to the total cost of just maintaining the building,
Right.
which makes it not friendly.
Yeah. So that's why reserves, having adequate reserves is one of the immutable laws of real estate investing, because you're holding this building for 5 years, things change down the line, right? And if you don't have reserves to deal with those changes, you're stuck. Israel, you had a question?
Yeah, you were talking about the tax appeals, property tax appeal. If they're appealing it, are you gonna go under contract contingent upon it going a certain way and renegotiate?
That's a very good question, Israel. So what you want to do is let's say if let's say for example you buying the property, the city has appealed the taxes and it's under appeal, right? You could put some language in there that any extra cost that comes on top of the taxes, maybe your previous owner or the other person is responsible for taking care of that cost, right? Or you could go back and renegotiate the value of the property, because that if the new taxes go into effect, that significantly changes the value of your building. But what I would tell you to do as an operator is, if you know the taxes are in appeal, underwrite your property based on the fact that appeal the city is going to win, right? And if the deal still pencils, then you buy it. Do not go with the best case scenario. Always go with the worst case scenario, because $100,000 change in NOI significantly affects the value of a building. So you might overpay for a building if you do not put that into account. Jean, you have
Hey,
a
Leslie,
question?
can I
Go ahead,
add to
man.
that?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I was gonna add to the taxes, and this is critical. You should be pay attention to when it comes to tax
That's Coach
appeals.
Manny right there.
Even if it's been appealed and you have some kind of tax abatement and you have documentation on it, on exit, you want to make sure that you factor in the fact that appeal doesn't hold. Because the mistake you don't want to make is underwrite with a tax abatement and don't factor in that on exit, the next buyer doesn't have the same tax abatement. So you almost like overestimating what the sale price would be because you're not factoring the full taxes. So even if there's a tax abatement in place and you underwrite the deal, still assume that the next buyer has to pay the full taxes on exit and see how the deal works. that's just like something you have to pay attention to.
That's a very good point, Manny. Thank you.
Even if the seller is pressuring you to buy the deal, that they're going to give you the game. No, I agree.
Don't listen to that crap. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. Leslie, do you know if a seller can provide a P&L for current expense and revenue, which is not accurate when it comes to expense, actually, because rent, you can get a rent roll and stuff like that to check, but for the expense, do you think it's possible someone can do that?
Yeah, it is, right? So that's why their T12 really doesn't mean jack. What you estimated is based off of what your property manager say you're gonna run the property at, right? And I'm an owner. When we want to sell a building, what we do is we optimize the expenses. We make sure that we're not spending money on whatever, so that we decrease the expenses and the NOI increases, right? That's what every owner does, right? So those numbers, if you're an underwriter, doesn't mean crap. What you have to do is you use numbers based on how you're going to run the property.
Okay.
So you're not using the seller's numbers to make your decision on how much you're going to pay for it. You're using your numbers on how you and your team are going to manage that property, what your projected expenses will be. Then that's what you use to make your offer.
Yeah, thank you.
Gene, that's a $50,000 question right there.
I got you, brother.
All right, guys. If you don't have any more questions, we're just gonna open it for networking. In this part of our meetup, if you have a business, you're doing anything you want to share with the group. Again, remember the importance of all of this is we're building a community. So we want to learn about your business. If the opportunity for us to collaborate and work together, we'd love to hear about it. If you're facing any challenges, anything that is related to business or real estate, please bring it out. You also get a free as a side, you get free coaching on this call as well. So go ahead.
Leah, go ahead. I know you wanted to say something.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leah. This is Jeremy. We are the proud owners of Priority One Capital. We partnered with Excite and are part of their mentorship program, and we are in the thick of it with learning how to underwrite with Manny. We're headed into week 13. So I am the director of investor relations. Jeremy is the director of acquisition. So we are approaching all this as a team. We're very excited, and we will definitely get our first deal within this first year. It's just a matter of time.
Do it.
Priority One Capital, buying big deals. Love it.
Brisley, you want to introduce yourself or share with the group? Because you've asked a lot of questions. Go ahead. Take the floor.
Hello. Well, my name is Brinsley. I am new in this. Leslie is a very good friend to my wife. So he shared a very touching story on his LinkedIn, and my wife saw it. My wife was like, "This is exactly what you've been telling me every day. You gotta call him." So I hooked up to Leslie. He gave me so many books to read. And so I'm in the process of just gathering muscle memory. And that's why you see me asking some of those questions, probably that basic that some of you already know. But I'm moving towards the environment where I'm now convincing my wife to change her direction of what she want to do and join me in this real estate journey. So right now we're just looking at everything. We got money everywhere. We're trying to see how we can start liquefying some money around. And I know one of the things about real estate is to use other people's money. Something that Leslie put right in my head very, very early on. So, like I said, I'm just studying. So I'm learning, and then I'm teaching my wife a couple of things, how it goes. So she was supposed to be in this Zoom today, but she's doing some dealing with the kids and homework and stuff. You know, it's school time, so that's why she's saying. And I'm calling from DC. I'm actually at work. I just finished work and I jump into the call, so I've not even gotten home yet. So I'm
Beautiful.
excited. This is a nice team. It looks like everybody here is very willing to help out, and I'm willing to learn as much as possible.
Let's start taking action, Brisley. Let's start taking action.
So
That's
I'm
it.
going to tell you guys a funny story about my dear friend Brinsley's wife and I. We were roommates in Greensboro, and we were living in this apartment off of Brieford Circle. This is a funny story, full circle moment. Like things were tough. At one point, we could barely afford to pay our rent. We were hustling like little students, you know, doing odd jobs here and there. But I'll tell you this, 2 years ago, we put an offer on that property, on
Wow.
that same apartment building that
Wow.
I could not afford to pay rent in. And we put an offer. We did not win it. I was like, oh my God, I hope we buy this. This is gonna be a good story for me to tell my kids. We did not win it. But that's just to show you that it doesn't matter where you are today. Like this too is possible, man. You just gotta take action and move forward.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Israel, you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. This is my second or third call on with you guys. It's a great group. I'm from Dallas, Texas. My full-time work, I flip houses as well, and I like rent houses. Um, but my full-time work is as an M&A advisor. So I work with business sellers and I work with business buyers to
Hmm.
acquire companies. Leslie, you touched upon like wanting to
We
do
need to
like
connect. We need to connect, man. We need to connect.
You touched upon doing like a roll-up. Right now, I have 3 clients that are specifically those clients they're doing roll-up strategy, buying insurance agencies, putting them together to sell them later to a private equity group.
Oh wow.
Yeah, would love to help you guys out. I love
Want to
like
buy a
crunching
SaaS
numbers.
company. A SaaS company. We'll talk on the side.
SaaS? Yeah. Let's chat. So good guy. This is a great group, guys. I've learned a lot while I've been on here, learning a lot, all these tips and tricks of the trade, and I look forward to meeting you guys and hopping on more of these calls.
Definitely, Israel. We'll definitely be reaching out to you. Before I pass on to anybody else, I want to say Tania, we're shy to introduce yourself, dropped it in the chat. She says, I'm Jamaican Canadian from Toronto, launching a CRE fund based in Miami to invest in Florida and Texas to start. She has a link on LinkedIn. Please add her. This is a contact card in the chat. Connect, guys. You want to go fast, you go by yourself. You want to go far, you go with others. This is a community. Connect with other people. Be good to each other. Give value to each other, and keep growing. Thank you, Andre. Says excellent information, and Kay Jackson says that's awesome. Anybody else wants to drop a word?
Question for everybody on this group chat right now. I have a question for everybody. Do you guys think it would be valuable to have a platform where people can come on, collaborate, ask questions? If you think that would be a good idea, shoot us a note what you would like to see about it, because we continue to build this community and folks of like minds are here. We want to create a platform where people can actually collaborate, like Leslie just said. And as we're talking and having this conversation, you just hit me. I'm like, that might be a good thing for us to do. So if you think that would be a good idea for everybody to be together, somewhere where we can all collaborate, please let us know, and we'll consider that and see if we can create a platform like that. We dare to be unique, so that's one thing we can do to be unique.
Kay Jackson has
I thought you guys already had that.
No, we don't have like a
close
virtual
community.
community like
Oh,
an
okay,
app. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
I think that's a great idea, Tenny. You on fire today, man. You've been
I know.
hitting us with some good ideas today, man. I love it. Stay on that track so that so that we can get some good ideas. Kay Jackson is dropping a new book. Everybody check it out. Let's support Kay Jackson. It's called The Sun is Rising. You can get it at inspireandempower.org. So Kay Jackson, thank you for sharing. I definitely will check it out myself.
Tosin said, good job on the platform. Everybody, please let us know what you think on the chat. Let us know if you want the platform.
Oluwa Tosin says you in on the platform. So we're gonna create that, and we're gonna send an invitation for everybody to join, and we'll be dropping value on there, and just making sure we continue to give value on your investment journey.
I don't know how we're gonna do it yet, but we'll do it.
We'll figure it out.
All right. What time is it right now? To be respectful, we still got
I
some
ask
time,
a
guys. Come
question?
on, come
Go
online.
ahead, Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, sorry I waited to the end, but I was taking in a lot of information. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I've been following you guys on LinkedIn and very interested in what you guys are doing. My question is, so I've come across a flyer or an article that Baltimore has a lot of open properties for sale. Baltimore, I guess the mayor or the city is selling properties for like $1. So I actually took a ride. I'm in the Philly area. So I took a ride this past weekend on Saturday and I went to Baltimore and I drove around mainly, I think, West Baltimore. And there are like a ton of just old, dilapidated buildings, that have been left. And I think the city is trying to sell them. So my idea was to go there, take a look, and possibly purchase some of them, and then start to do the renovation and all of that and get it ready for move-in. So my question is, with what you guys have, what, in your opinion, is a better approach into real estate? Is it better to go down that route, get your hands dirty, get into it, or come on board with you guys, kind of do it more, quote unquote, the easy way? But the only thing, because I spoke with Miles, hi Miles, I'm here. So I spoke with Miles, but I think the way that you guys have it is to get into your, I don't know what you call it, a fund or this kind of investment strategy, is that you would need somebody that's coming in with quite a bunch of money, maybe $100,000 or more, up to $1 million. So for a new investor like myself, if I don't necessarily have that kind of money, what would be your advice for me?
I didn't have that money too.
You must have told Miles you have a lot of money. That's why he said $1 million is your minimum. But before I go into the question about Baltimore, I'm gonna let Leah and Jeremy speak about the Baltimore because they are locals to the Baltimore and they know this market very well. And I could see their reaction when you were asking that question. So Leah and Jeremy, you guys want to give us some insights about the Baltimore market?
Sure. So Baltimore City in and of itself is a very special place, but particularly the west side of Baltimore is not where you want to get your hands dirty. Just if you look at median household income in that area, you look at the crime statistics in that area, the crime alone it's horrific. You have squatters that will squat in you're trying to renovate townhomes or houses down there, and you will be in litigation trying to get them out. Sometimes upwards of 2 to 3 years. My encouragement to you is to stay away from that west side of Baltimore, but there's such an oversupply there. The median household income there is just, it's not great. And the city, even though that's an attractive deal, is not going to do much to support you in the way of you being the landlord or the property owner. And then there's the whole ground rent situation where they will sell you the actual building, but they may still own the ground rent. So there's a lot of loopholes and things in that area that you really have to be careful of, but particularly the crime rate. I worked downtown for a very long time at like the #1 trauma center in the entire like United States, basically. And I can tell you that crime there is pretty bad. So yeah. And I will tell you, full disclosure, as far as where you want to get in, that was a question that Jeremy and I asked ourselves about multifamily. We are not construction people. We are not the handiest of people. It's not our forte, but one of the things that attracted to us about multifamily was that, we have 3 girls and obviously 3 college tuitions, and we're, in our early 50s. And so for us, we looked at the investment part of learning as a little bit of like college tuition for ourselves. And so raising capital for deals is something that you're going to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that information. So are you running more or less the same model of a business that Excite is doing?
Absolutely. One of the things that you're going to figure out quickly is that there's a great amount of abundance in the sense that there's something for everybody. So you'll figure out, you know, your first deal or what you want to go after doesn't have to be $5 million. I mean, it could be, you know, less than that. It could be more than that. It's really what you desire as far as the type of properties and how and what your business plan going in, and you know what your investors you know how they want to invest. So yeah, we have modeled our business after theirs, and we're learning like crazy. So
Okay.
yeah,
So you can actually get in and start off your own business just as you're doing without necessarily.
yeah. I mean, you have
Looking-
kind of like two options, right? Like you can go in and be a passive investor, but like Leslie said, you are not someone who, as being passive doesn't mean you're not learning. But Jeremy and I wanted to be general partners. We, you know, we want to be general partners, and that does, you know, you could be co-general partners with somebody else as well. So there's a lot of options with that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that information.
Oh, you're welcome.
Leah, I'm so proud, man. You hit that question
Coach,
like
Coach Leah.
like an expert. You were talking
He's a
about median
pro.
household income and all this. You know, just to add to what Leah and Jeremy said, and by the way, Leah and Jeremy Priority One Capital are one of our great mentees. Super proud of you guys for all the growth that's happening, and thank you for giving us the privilege to guide you on this journey. Like she said, there are thousands of units in the US. We cannot buy them all. One of our core values is to create other platforms like Excite Capital, and we're super proud of what they're creating. When you buy a property as an investment property, somebody has to live in there for it to be an investment. If you buy a property in an area where nobody wants to live in until they're offering houses for $1, you're probably going to end up renting it for 50 cents. So that was a joke, by the way. Baltimore is very tricky. Like that deal, it's really ideal for like developers or like big time investors, like maybe other groups that are interested in that area, or like ourselves, where you go in and buy maybe 100 or 200 of those units, and you completely revamp the whole block. Now, if you see that happening, right, and there's something in there, you gotta minimize your risk, especially when you're going in early, right? Then at that point, you could go try to get in there, you know. But why do all of that, right? Just learn how to buy a nice building that is cash flowing from day one, and it's gonna build your generational wealth over time. You decrease your downside and increase your upside, you know. So again, it's just one of those things where, and when I started, I was like you. The mind always navigates to the path of least resistance, right? That's where your mind always goes. So when you hear a building of $1, that's where you want to go. When you hear something, you want to go where you can afford it yourself, because going and raising capital from investors is like, oh, I don't want to ask people for money and I don't want to do all of that, you know. But I promise you, if being active, you really enjoy doing it, giving value, buying this building, I promise you, you just challenge yourself a little bit and push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, you can do exactly the same thing that we're doing. We're no different than you. All three of us that started this company are African immigrants. And if you ask our stories, we probably all came to the US with less than $100 in our pocket and just a dream.
Leslie,
And
I wasn't that poor. I wasn't that poor. I don't know about you. I came
So
with money, man. What's your problem?
don't let me show this group the shoes that you were wearing when you were at Bowie State.
I wasn't that poor, Leslie. What's your problem?
You know, so you can do it for sure. Brins, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Oh yes, I was just gonna piggyback on the passive investor. I'm very new on this. I don't even know what kind of numbers we're talking about being a passive investor. Do you have a minimum, maximum? What kind of dollar amount?
$1 million
So
for
that
you.
we start having an idea. I'm new. I'm just new. So just break it down for me in terms of numbers. If I want to be a
Absolutely.
passive person.
So you want to be a passive investor, most deals require you to have a minimum of $50,000 as your investment. And the projected returns is usually anywhere from 13% average annual returns to as high as 20% average annual returns. And those returns work in two folds. You have the return from the cash flow, which is usually they usually call it a preferred rate of return. Preferred rate of return means that when the cash flow comes from the building, that preferred rate has to be met for the passive investors before the active investors can get any kind of return. So let's say the preferred rate of return is 6%, and the cash flow comes from the building. You as a passive investor, we must give you at least 6% on your 50,000 annually before we can get any kind of returns from it. Then now you're going to be getting those passive pref returns while we hold the building. Then when we exit and sell for a higher valuation, you get a piece of the appreciation as well. Because every deal is bought under a new entity, and every investor is a partial owner of that entity. The passive investors are limited partners, which means they're not involved in the day-to-day management, but they own a piece of that entity that owns the building, and you get your returns according to that. And when you add the returns from the cash flow and the appreciation, that's what adds up to about 13 to as high as 20% average annual return.
Makes sense. It's good to know the numbers so that you know where you are with that. Thank you.
And it varies with any deal. Dr. Ezia Mama, I see you on camera. What you got?
Dr. Cam, hey, how you doing?
So am I staticky? I feel like it's me, but I'm not sure.
Leslie's internet. Don't worry. Continue.
Hi everyone. I was just listening in the background, and I just wanted to say hi. Oh, who am I? My name is Nkem Ezamama. I'm an ER physician. I am the CEO and founder of Phoenix Capital Investment, and I just wanted to I really wanted to come and just encourage Sarah, because just hearing kind of your questions and it just reminded me of where I was a few years ago. And it really all started with this call, or yes, it really all started with this call. And I remember the first time I was here, and I was like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, asking the same questions. And so it's definitely doable when you put your mind to do exactly what you want to do. You start off small, and before you know it, it's just like a tiny snowball, and it just like takes effect. And before you know, you're building something really cool, something amazing. And it just starts with one, deciding, and then two, finding the people who you align with. And I can say wholeheartedly that I align with the people on this call and Excite Capital. So you pick your people, you pick your team, and you just say that like we're in this together. And you know that like you're not doing it alone. This, when you start thinking about how big this is a massive endeavor. But when you think that you don't have to do it alone, when you think that you're like, I have people, I can reach out to this person, I can reach out to this person, these people on the call will become your people if you start coming here once a month. So I just kind of wanted to encourage you. It seems daunting. And also, same thing with Brinsley. It seems daunting. It's like, how can I even, these numbers are too large. But like, it just starts with, like Tenny just said, community. It just starts with showing up, asking questions. No, there's no dumb question. There's no tiny question. And before you know it, you're also answering someone else's question. So I just wanted to say hi and just say that, like, I love coming here, whether I'm listening at work or I'm like in my office. It's just coming here to just learn something new and to meet some wonderful faces. So hi, everyone.
Thank
Good to
you
see
so
you
much.
too.
Thank you so
you.
much, Dr. Nkem. Dr. Ezia is a force of nature, guys. Phoenix Capital. Check her out, man. This is real. You two can do it. But before I pass it over to somebody else, I just want to announce 3 winners to our giveaway. Oluwatosin. Let me not mess the name. No, I'll just say Oluwatosin. You know who you are. Gavin Smith and James Jarman. All 3 of you have won a copy of our workbook, the physical copy, and it's going to get shipped to you in a few weeks. So congratulations. We're going to be reaching out to you to get your address. Miss K. Jackson, I see you on camera. I want to hear about you. Just say a few words. You're muted. Don't be shy. You're already on camera. You want to introduce yourself to the group?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I got on here later. I was asking about a replay. I'm Dr. Kim Jackson. I'm a family medicine physician. I met you all at NMA. So I've been following kind of the emails and things like that. Definitely interested in more of the passive investment and opportunities there, but a newbie. So just kind of taking it slow, listening, checking things out. And I look forward to being on more and learning more information. So that's me. And I was the one that dropped the book. I wrote a book, The Sun is Rising at inspiredempower.org. Thanks for shouting that out. And just excited about more ways to bless myself, my family, and my community. So thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Congrats on the book, by the way. Everybody on this call,
Thank you.
please make sure you go to that website and buy Dr. Jackson's book. Let's support each other. I'm going to be the first to buy it. So congrats on that. And thank you for joining
you.
us. Yes, you're going to be getting a copy of this recording. And then you also, as a attendee of this call, you're going to get a copy of our passive investor guide to help you as you make your investment decisions in future assets. And thank you. And we'll see you again at NMA this year.
Yes,
we'll be out there.
absolutely.
Leslie, when you buy the book, can you buy one for me too?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
When you pick partners, don't pick one that is cheap like my partner, you know. So.
Miles, you heard that, right? People are looking for deals. You better start working.
Oh gosh.
I'm sorry, can I ask one last question? I understand you're about
Go
to
ahead.
wrap it up.
Go ahead.
Yes, please go
So
ahead.
I think the thing that is missing, and thank you very much, and Care, is that how you say your name? I've been
Yes.
following you on LinkedIn. All you guys are just motivating me so much. So I think the missing link for me here is, so as a new investor like myself, am I coming on to Excite to invest with you guys, or am I creating my own type of investment fund or company or whatever? So that's the part that I'm kind of like confused about.
So it depends on what your goals are, right? Everything starts with where you want to go. If your goal is to be an owner operator of multifamily assets, then what you want to invest your time in doing is learning how to do that so that you could build a platform like Excite Capital. Now, if your goal is to build wealth, right, and you maybe do not have the time to manage this asset or to build a platform like Excite Capital because it takes a lot of work, right? Then you can invest passively in one of our assets. Now, you're not investing in Excite Capital, you're investing along with Excite Capital, and you're being a member of the entity that owns the asset. But if you want to be active, if you want to learn how to buy apartment buildings, 20, 30, 50 units, right? Then use the link on the chat that Tenny dropped earlier. Complete the application. We'll get on a call with you and see if you be a good fit for our one-on-one mentorship
Leslie,
program.
she's a good fit. She's a good fit. She has good
Thank
questions.
you very much.
She's a good fit. Approved.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. I think we're above above the time that we have allotted for this right now. Please, you see, we don't want to go. We're having such a great time with everybody here. I see a lot of people are still on the call. We're going to give you like 2 more minutes. If you have more questions, please come on and ask. If not, we're going to create a community and you guys can ask us a lot of questions. I will be there every day. Spend a couple of hours and answer
There's a
questions.
deal in DC that you guys might be interested in. I saw a building built in front of me, and it's in foreclosure and it's an auction right now.
Is it an apartment building?
Yes. When you said about foreclosure, I saw it the other day. I
Can you
couldn't
send it to
believe.
me? Send it to me, and then we'll take a look at it. Send me.
Just put the link there. I think that's a news link, but there is an agent who is conducting the foreclosure, I think in about a month. They're conducting the auction in about a month. That
Send
area
it. Send me the news report. I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions, guys? Any more questions? If not, Leslie, wrap it up. You've been doing a good job tonight. Let's go.
Oh my God. You know, I run out of energy when I talk too much, but you talk too much and get more energy. So I just want to say on behalf of our CEO, Dr. Julius Oni, and our entire team, I just want to say thank you guys very much for taking the time to join us tonight. I hope you got a ton of value from our conversations tonight. And guys, please join our platforms, share with your friends and family, learn about this asset class, use it to grow wealth for yourselves. And if there's any other way that we could provide more value to you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. All we're doing is doing our very best to make sure that we're giving you as much value as possible. So Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Everybody that stayed with us to the end, we truly appreciate you because you could have been anywhere, but you're here with us. On that note, on behalf of the entire Excite team, I say good night.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Have a
Thanks,
good
guys.
night.
Good night.
See you, everybody.